we're gonna touch on this story about ICE targeting farms. This is another instance of this is another way for mass deportations to begin. So ICE is going to go to places that they know historically employ or have a large population of potentially undocumented migrants, or even if they're documented. Like, Trump wants to get them the fuck out of here too. But this is specifically about a farm in Bakersfield, courtesy of America's Voice. Oh my God, the font on this is like 8 point. Immigration raids targeting Bakersfield farm workers are a frightening preview of Trump's bloody mass deportation agenda. In a frightening preview of the administration's incoming bloody mass detention and deportation agenda across the nation, Border Patrol agents in unmarked vehicles have reportedly been carrying out ugly, racially profiled raids in California's agricultural heartland, including stalking immigrants outside of stores popular among farm workers. This early example of the Trump effect on how the on-the-ground law enforcement interprets the range of power is a chilling reminder of what we witnessed under the first Trump administration and what could be done of something and what could be the start of something worse as soon as next week. The unmarked cars, the racial profiling, abusive harassment, and wide dragnets are likely just the tip of the spear of the incoming administration, and the signs are unmistakable. They are, quote, enemy invaders within, threatening everything, quote, real Americans hold dear, and the federal government will be interested in critical oversight in how local officials deal with, quote, the enemy. And America's agricultural and rural regions will be the hardest hit. In one example of the indiscriminate nature of the sweeps, agents reportedly harassed and detained a Latino U.S. citizen, including slashing the vehicle's tires after he refused their demands to turn over his keys, local KGET outlets said. The enforcement operations across Bakersfield came just one day after Congress certified Donald Trump's win. Keep in mind that this is only going to get worse because private citizens or citizens are allowed to this is going to get worse because immigrants will run the risk of being deported just on the basis, on the accusation of them committing a crime, thanks to the Laken Riley Act. You don't have to be convicted. You don't even have to be arrested. You just have to be accused. And you run the risk of getting deported. It was profiling. It was purely field workers, said Sarah Fuentes, store manager of the local gas station. She said that at 9 a.m., when the store typically gets a rush of workers on their way to pick up oranges, two men in civilian clothes and unmarked Suburbans started detaining people outside the store. Quote, they didn't stop people with FedEx uniforms. They were stopping people who looked like they worked in the fields. Fuentes said one customer pulled in just to pump gas, and the agents approached him and detained him. Fuentes has lived in Bakersfield all her life and says she's never seen anything like it. In one instance, she said a man and a woman drove up to the store together and the man went inside. Border Patrol detained the man as he walked out and then demanded the woman get out of the vehicle. When she refused, another agent parked his vehicle behind the woman, blocking her car. Fuentes said it wasn't until the local Univision station showed up that Border Patrol agents backed up their car and allowed the woman to leave.
Now to immigration in Kern County. In recent days, reports of a surge in raids of undocumented residents have been circulating on social media. 17's Jenny Hutt joins us now live in studio with the details. Jenny?
Bakersfield Police tells us they were notified by the Department of Homeland Security and Border Patrol that they would be conducting operations in Kern County this week.
What we're hearing is that the CBP pulling cars over and profiling folks. They're reported being seen at like the most transient site for farm workers.
CBP is Customs and Border Protection. Sightings of Border Patrol activities is being reported all over Kern County, from Maricopa to the downtown Gap bus station, even door to door and on freeways. But this Chevron off 7 Standard and Merle Haggard saw arrests firsthand.
Well, we usually get our normal people in here coming in. They buy their food, they go to work, and they were field workers. And as soon as they paid their food and everything, they went outside. And as soon as they went outside, they grabbed them. They started taking their belongings. They were all laughing while their food was getting thrown away.
They, as in Border Patrol agents. Employee Candy Garcia tells 17 News. Garcia says the agents, many undercover, parked right outside and took away 2 vanfuls of people. She says they'll likely be back
Because they were here doing that yesterday at McDonald's.
She and the gas station owner say it's no.
They're just fucking spawn trapping. This happens because local law enforcement allows it to happen, and the local governments allows it to happen. The only way you can prevent this is by your local leaders not complying with ICE. ICE does not have the funding, they do not have the manpower to conduct these sweeps on their own. They also, I don't believe, have jurisdiction over these as well, unless they get cooperation with local law enforcement. But local law enforcement harbors the exact same sentiment toward minorities. These people are all cops, just to different degrees, and they're all content with this, which is why it's allowed to happen and why it will happen.
Coincidence, the agents targeted their Chevron.
And none of the other stores got hit except for this one because it's like the bigger one. This is where almost everybody comes in.
99% they are farmer workers. They are my regular customer, my regular bread and butter.
Dylan says it's to the extent that most of the food he serves is Mexican cuisine.
What happened today, it is the first time I hear it. I'm a permanent legal person. And I'm scared too.
If they look
Because
Hispanic or
it doesn't matter if you're here on TPS, if you're a citizen, it doesn't matter. You are a target of this administration. I hate to say it, but like, these people, unfortunately, do have a right to be scared. And it's like, even I know quite a few people, whether they're documented, whether they're on TPS, whether they're citizens who have immigrated to this country. And I fear for them. In all honesty, like, I'm putting it out there. This scares me. This frightens me, especially because I live on Long Island. I live in the New York City metro area. There are tons of Latino immigrants, right? Every community around here is tremendously diverse. And this is why ICE is targeting major cities like LA, like Chicago, like New York, because they have a considerable immigrant population, especially Southern California, which, is a few hours from the border.
or like they worked in the fields or, they looked a little dirty, they would ask for their papers.
Witnesses also say
Which
agents.
You don't have to surrender those. There is a preparations list that includes your rights. An ICE agent can only come into your house, for instance, with a warrant signed by a judge, which they typically don't have. You don't have to open your door to them. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to present papers to them, even if you have them. You need an immigration lawyer. Unfortunately, if you are a migrant at this time, you have to have the information, the phone number of someone who you can readily contact, who will argue on your behalf, who will fight for you. You need contingency plans as well if this does happen to you. It's a sad state of affairs. It really is. But just remember that you do not need to turn over any documentation to these people.
Checked paperwork in the parking
This is not legal advice, by the way. I'm just putting that out there.
lot.
They approach the person in her car, and when she refused to get out, they try to block her in by refusing her car to move.
And after checking this individual's paperwork, the agents headed out. When asked if there are any ongoing operations in Kern, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE referred 17 News to CBP. CBP is separate from ICE. The sightings in Kern have been of Border Patrol agents. In California, local law enforcement cannot assist ICE or other such federal bodies on immigration matters. Sheriff Donnie Youngblood says Casey...
Okay, so everything I said before is a lie about local assistance.
PSO is not involved with any current operations that may be ongoing.
We are a few days away from the new administration taking office, and this is in fact what they threaten with.
Now, we did hear back from CBP a little after 4. They tell us they're working on a media statement, and we'll get that to us in the...
The article continues. Casey Creamer, president of the industry group California Citrus Mutual, told Olmos that this is one of their busiest harvesting times of the year, but following the frightening news that immigrants were getting swept up while refueling their trucks or picking up some breakfast before starting their day, 25% of citrus workers stayed home from work. The day after, 75% stayed home. The raids have sent shockwaves through the entire community, Creamer said. People aren't going to work and kids aren't going to school, mirroring mass school absences following past workplace raids in states like Mississippi, New Mexico, and Tennessee. Throughout the raids, Border Patrol appeared to be profiling farm workers, United Farm Workers said. These raids have resulted in dozens of arrests of hardworking people, including UFW union members. The labor union called law enforcement's actions, quote, a troubling preview of what to expect our communities to endure over the next 4 years. In the last decade, Georgia and Alabama learned firsthand of the devastating impacts of their state anti-immigration crackdowns as well, which resulted in empty work sites and crops rotting in the field. Florida has recently learned as well. That's in reference to a law that they passed either last year or 2 years ago, where it effectively barred undocumented immigrants from working in Florida by forcing them to fill out verification purposes, which they are supposed to do. However, corporations do not enforce that because they can pay these folks way below the minimum wage. It was estimated that took like $1.8 billion off of Florida's GDP because migrants work overwhelmingly in agriculture, in construction, and in food service. They work the jobs that are fundamental to the sustainability of our society. This is why mass deportations have the potential to fundamentally alter the United States, because it's an agricultural thing. Food won't be able to be delivered to supermarkets, right? Construction, food service, it goes on and on. These are just the economic ramifications of it. I don't want that to be the main takeaway. This is above all else inhumane and just flat out disgusting that these people who come to this country are trying to make a living and they run the risk of being detained and deported simply because they were born in Honduras or because they were born in Guatemala or Venezuela. They're literally going to work to pick citrus. These are not criminals. These are law-abiding citizens who not only contribute to the economy, but help build really diverse communities. Creamer also, quote, pushed back on the Border Patrol's claim they're targeting bad people. He said they appeared to be general sweeps of workers. In a statement, CBP claimed that agents were focused on targeting alleged drug and human traffickers. How do you think someone's padre going to a gas station is engaging in human trafficking? That's profiling. Like, how do you, like, it, God, it's so fucking gross. If true, this would fall under current immigration enforcement priorities. Yeah, dude, if someone is committing crime, arrest them, prosecute them. But we've discussed this. You are more likely to have a crime committed against you on a percentage basis, on a per capita basis, by a natural-born U.S. citizen. These are just the facts. But facts don't matter when you have a fascist government. But what's actually happening on the ground is telling a different story. The harassment of naturalized U.S. citizen Ernesto Campos amid the Bakersfield raids can attest to, quote, a 44-year-old father of four, Campos, has lived in the U.S. for 30 years and became a citizen over 2 decades ago. This guy's been a citizen since the Bush administration. He's lived in Bakersfield for 20 years and owns a landscaping business with 4 employees, but he was caught in this deportation dragnet despite his permanent legal status. Campos and a co-worker were driving to work when they were pulled over by an unmarked vehicle. When he refused to turn over his keys to the agents, they slashed his tires. He was then detained for hours and released only when his citizenship was confirmed. Campos had the smarts to capture some of the ordeal on video. As advocates have noted in the Know Your Rights materials, you are permitted to record interactions with immigration agents as long as you don't interfere with their activities. The people who did this deserve to be fired and should never work in law enforcement ever again. This is disgusting. This is abhorrent. This is illegal, right? You can't just ask someone for their keys and then slash their tires, dude. Campos says he's still coping with the situation and only half his employees showed up to work after the raids. This is so traumatic. Like, your whole existence is living in a constant state of fear that you are going to be taken away from your family for just merely having been born in South or Central America. Richard Gearhart, an associate professor of economics at Cal State Bakersfield, told Cal Matters that if the indiscriminate arrests of workers is, quote, the new normal, this is absolute economic devastation. This is not hyperbole. California farm workers, 3/4 of whom are undocumented, are the backbone of the agricultural industry. Nationally, more than 1 million farm workers are undocumented. Yeah, California is a massive state. California has a tremendous impact on the food production in this country. I mean, and it's not even just agriculture. It's missing the point that immigrants, and this is historic all throughout the history of the United States, immigrants have always worked jobs that society is built upon. Doesn't matter if they're Latinos now, doesn't matter if they were from Italy in the early 1900s, like my family is, right? My great grandfather came over and he was a laborer in New York City, either Brooklyn or Manhattan. Before that, it was German immigrants. They always work these jobs because these are some of the shittiest jobs in the country, just in terms of compensation, right? Because they're able to be exploited at a greater rate than a natural born U.S. citizen. During a segment on Sirius XM, the Michelangelo Signorile show almost further revealed that CBP officials refused to respond to his request for verified information about the public operation. Border Patrol, quote, just did not reply to us. He said he found out more about the public operation only because the border chief for the El Centro sector was posting about it on his personal Facebook. This official said that more operations are being planned for other areas of the state, including Fresno and, quote, especially Sacramento. Yeah, because that's definitely not politically targeted. Oh, yeah, Sacramento. You mean the capital of California? The capital of the liberal safe haven that is California? The capital of the state that has a larger undocumented population or a larger immigrant population than any other state? Yeah, surely that's not politically motivated. To add to this lack of transparency from this public agency, Jen Budd, a former senior Border Patrol agent and whistleblower, said that local reporters have told her that Border Patrol has refused to release the names of the people apprehended by the agency. I'm not going to go on any further with this because it's largely just quotes. The likeliest explanation for Border Patrol's lack of transparency is they are simply not detaining the priorities they claim they're targeting. It's going to get to a point, I think, where they're just open about, yeah, we're going to come into your community, and if someone looks like they're from Nicaragua or El Salvador, we're going to put them in the back of a police truck, strap take them to a SpaceX rocket site, and then launch them into space. At a certain point, they will just be open about it. It will become normalized by Trump and people within his administration. And I think that they're just not going to care about it. They're not going to care about the political ramifications of it. They're not going to care about any of the ramifications of it unless, the midterms come around and people are really put off by this, that they vote all of the Republicans out of Congress and label, Trump basically ineffective and allow him to get impeached. I'm being accelerationist at this point, I think, but really, I think that's one of the only ways you could look at this, is that it gets so bad so quickly that people are forced to do certain things. I'm not talking about violence, although I'm not advocating for it, but people have shown that they can be pushed to violence. I'm not saying it's going to happen against anybody in particular, but I am saying that I would not be surprised if things did become increasingly more violent, because you have a presidential administration that is increasingly violent.